Well, hi, hello. I am so excited as always to have somebody new for Spoonful of Spite. We are talking all about the interconnection of food fears and gastroparesis and, what it really looks like to truly find ways to nourish your body and really move forward with that. So, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and share a little bit about who you are, and then we'll dive right into our topic today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Samina Qureshi. I'm a registered dietitian and I specialize at the intersection of GI disorders and disordered eating. And I'm really excited to be here today to help people maybe break away from food fears and learn how to nourish their bodies with a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, and I know from our first conversation just how passionate you are. And as somebody firmly in the community, we really appreciate having people like you out there who are passionate about the education, but also passionate about advocating for patients to get the best care possible. And we see a lot of crossover between different eating patterns and just even my own experience with that of trying to figure out what works when everything hurts you. It's a real fine line between where do I look for treatment, who do I look for treatment from, and how do I get holistic treatment on the physical and the mental sides to really feel, better about the choices that I'm making and feel like I actually have a choice that I can make safely. So I
Yeah.
imagine you see a lot of patients, especially because of what you do, who have a lot of anxiety around eating just because of what this disease or diseases like this can do to the body after.
Yeah, absolutely. I see this so often in my practice. I'd say daily.
Wow.
Up to 45% of patients with GI disorders have a co-occurring disordered eating behavior. And so what that means is that you can really struggle with your relationship with food when you're diagnosed or when you're managing a chronic illness. Right. And so it can happen across any illness, chronic illness, whether it's diabetes or high blood pressure,
Mhm.
high cholesterol, gastroparesis, IBS. These all may require some sort of dietary modification, which is great, right? We have these things that can help you manage the condition, but that can also feel like a lot of pressure. And so
Mhm.
that's when maybe you don't have the right or any support or resources to really learn more about this, and food can become really overwhelming.
Yeah, I know that there have been some times where I feel like I'm a very self-aware person, but sometimes being so self-aware can make me a little bit uncomfortable where I start to fall into like older patterns around eating when I'm in a flare that I hadn't felt in a really long time, and it has taken a lot of years, a lot of practice, and a lot of conversations to really say, like, "Okay, what am I recognizing or what am I doing?" And really that's hard, and I think it's hard for a lot of us to talk about too because of the stigma around gastroparesis in general, or that it's all in your head, or it's not an actual, like, physical disease, it's just an eating disorder, and I think it's really left a lot of us in a space of, like, where you don't feel comfortable asking for help because you're just afraid of the response that you're gonna get from the person you're talking to is going to be dismissive, when really someone like yourself is exactly who we need to talk to because you have an understanding of both sides of how that can affect us.
Yeah, I remember during our first conversation, you had mentioned that you recently learned that there were dietitians that specifically focused on like GI or eating disorders, in
Mhm.
my case, both. And I think that's really telling, right? Many of these conditions may be after someone's gone to like an ER visit and they're getting a
Mhm.
diagnosis there after maybe the gastric emptying study or whatever their diagnostic process was. And
Mhm.
I feel like inpatient dietitians don't have the time to properly provide nutrition education as an outpatient dietitian would. So whether your experience with a dietitian was in inpatient setting or maybe
Mhm.
outpatient in the clinic, I do think that we're all trying our best. We're all helping professionals, hoping to provide
Yeah.
you with the best resources and care. Um, But just like, you know, working with a therapist, you may have to figure out which style is best for you to really
Yes.
get that support that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I know for me, it took a couple different dietitians to find somebody who I felt safe with and that also understood what I was going through from a holistic point of view and not just focusing on the gastroparesis or
Yeah.
not just focusing on, the mental side of making those choices. Like even just the frustration and the exhaustion of trial and error and learning about food and learning about the nutrition and understanding why certain foods or certain macronutrients might upset your stomach even more. It's like you're learning, the education is there, and maybe you're being more diligent, but even that in itself can cause some unintended hypervigilance, which also can have unintended consequences. So it's a balance that, at least from my own experience and those that I've heard, is very, very hard to find when you don't have the proper support around you to really guide you through that process because you don't know what you don't know, and you might not be aware of certain triggers to really help yourself through those situations and make the best choices for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to like symptom management and like I was saying, where you're learning maybe about tracking your food, you've never tracked your food before. Um, what for you as a professional would, if someone's coming to you, like trigger you to say that it might be starting to be an unhealthy relationship with the food in that respect? Is it because some people in certain situations, hypervigilance is necessary, but not for everybody, right? So
Yeah.
it has to be hard for you on your end of it to really figure out and decipher like, is this possibly heading into unhealthy behaviors or are they just still learning? Like, what does that look like for you? That was a very long question, but
Yeah.
hopefully you knew where I was going with that.
Yeah. So I guess there are some things that I want to address. Like I work in private practice, I work for
Mhm.
myself. I am spending as much time as I need with my patients to really give them that support, right? And one thing that I do in my practice is I'm screening my patients for disordered eating
Hmm.
and potential other things during the assessment, right? That are kind of coming up as red flags. And if someone in their history has said, hey, I used to struggle with like binge eating, or I had bulimia in high school, or I was a picky eater as a child, and that has really
Mhm.
impacted my ability to expand my diet and add variety as an adult. These are
Mhm.
all red flags where maybe food journaling and tracking may not be appropriate. So, like,
Yeah.
even before getting there, I would be screening each person that I'm working with to figure out the best method forward. Naturally, as a dietitian, I want to know like how you're nourishing your body. That would help
Yeah.
me provide you with most like customized recommendations, right?
Mhm.
Um, but there are absolutely ways for us to navigate food tracking that won't send you into this like spiral of hypervigilance that is not supportive. And
Yeah.
so in my practice, I use something called like the electronic health record allows me to disable calorie tracking and macro tracking and all of
Wow.
this stuff
Okay.
that may heighten someone's like hypervigilance around that aspect of their dietary management. When in
Mhm.
reality, all I want to know is, are you eating enough? Are you eating?
Mhm.
How many times a day are you eating? What is the method? Are you, or the consistency of your food? Are you having liquid meals? Are you having soft? Are you eating just straight solid meals? This will help me understand like what you're tolerating earlier in the day versus later in the day and things like
Mhm.
that. So, even as a dietitian, even if you have a history of disordered eating, and you don't want that to set you off, there are ways for us to manage tracking that can be more supportive. Of course, I also have patients that are saying, hey, no, I'm in active recovery right now. This doesn't feel good to me, and I cannot track. And then we
Hmm.
come up with different ways to set up reminders of times during the day that they are going to eat smaller, more
Hmm.
frequent meals, right? Just things that they can focus on that will help them stay nourished
I like
without
that.
like hyper focusing on all of the things.
Yeah, I know, a few months ago, I say a few months ago, but it's been a little while for me where, like, my intake has consistently, but slowly, but consistently, like, gone down as, the months have gone on, and it was getting more and more frustrating for me to be diligently logging into my macro tracking app, and it was because at the end of the day, I felt like such a disappointment because my calories were like nothing. And my protein had dropped and I was hardly eating and I wasn't hungry and I wasn't having any hunger pangs anymore. So I like all my systems have been all over the place. So the things that were working for me where I was like, look, I hit my protein, I'd send that to the dietitian and be like, here are my macros, here's what I was doing, this is what I'm feeling. It was working really well until it wasn't. And
Ugh,
I got to a point where I'm like, this is making me feel horrible. Like, tracking the food was making me feel so bad about myself, and I felt like a failure at the end of every single day, and then I was just like, "You know what? I don't wanna track anymore." But that made me feel really anxious because I'm like, "Well, how will I know if the food bothered me? Like, what do I do?" And to a degree, as a diabetic, I do need to measure, weigh, and track, to bolus for insulin issues, but
mhm,
I'm like, "What do I do?" And I was lucky enough to find a tracking app that's symptom management and food tracking without the calories, where I
yeah,
get to put in to say whatever I want in there, and I've been using that pretty diligently for, oh gosh, probably since maybe February at this point, and that, for me, allowed me the freedom and feeling like I had some control in what was happening and, seeing everything, but there were no numbers. It just was like what
yeah.
I wanted to put in, how much I put in, and my symptoms around it. And I felt like that was so much better for my mental health around tracking because I couldn't give up completely, but I couldn't keep down the road that I was doing. And that's where the self awareness is good, but also it hurts.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that you brought that up because that's something I focus on in my practice with all of my patients is like symptom
Hmm.
reporting and how you feel, even emotionally. Like, are you entering a meal super stressed because you have 2 minutes to eat when you're supposed to be
Yeah.
chewing the applesauce consistency and,
Yep.
all the things you need to do to care for your body and make sure the food is digesting in a way that suits you before your next
Hmm.
meeting. And so, that's
Yeah.
really telling too. Are there other outside factors that could be contributing to your symptoms versus the actual food itself when you did absolutely fine with it yesterday?
Hmm. Yeah, and that's very tough, especially for gastroparesis patients where there's a food that you might have that's, one of the foods that you go to all the time. You feel good adding it in every day. And then one day, boom, it just stops working for you. And for me, it's frustrating all around, but I'm like, if I wasn't tracking and I didn't know what was happening, if I wasn't looking at my symptoms, I might not be able to figure out why. And honestly, the why might be I have no clue. And that's just the
Yeah.
way the life with gastroparesis is. But it can be very frustrating and unintentionally get you to just start cutting everything because why wouldn't you? If you don't know what is bothering you, you're going to want to not ingest anything that might bother you. So then you cut out almost everything.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very understandable with a condition like gastroparesis for there to be a sense of stress, anxiety, fear
Mhm.
around food. It's completely understandable.
Yeah, and I think just having that conversation and feeling comfortable enough to say, like, I'm really anxious around eating. I still get really nervous around eating certain foods, or if I'm trying something again, for the first time. I saw somebody, had posted in one of our, like, support groups or in a gastroparesis support group about how if you had food poisoning, right, and that made you incredibly sick, it's going to be a really long time before you go back to that food. That's completely normal. But when you add the element of a digestive disease to that conversation, but it's basically the same context of I ate this food, it made me violently ill, I don't wanna go back to it. why, and this is a rhetorical question, but why is it that the next piece is, well, maybe it's because it's all in your head, and it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why are those situations that are almost exactly the same treated so completely different? It's very frustrating and harmful to patients who are really just looking for nutritional education, support from, maybe some support from a psychological aspect, but also the physical and medical support from a GI provider.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not a good feeling to feel like what you're experiencing is not happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, I wish we didn't see that as often as we do, but I think that's why these conversations are incredibly important. And, what works for one doesn't work for everybody. There are some people in our community who have not experience these patterns to the same degree as others, and maybe that this conversation wouldn't apply to them. And if that's the case, like, that's your experience. But for somebody else,
Hmm.
hopefully by the end of this, they would feel a little bit more comfortable to advocate for themselves, understand that, this isn't in my head. It's not because I'm not trying hard enough. That's not the only piece of the puzzle. There are other things at play here. And there are providers that can really, sit with me and help me understand what I'm going through and find a treatment plan going forward, whatever that treatment plan might look like.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about was weight. And this is a very hard subject, I feel like, to talk about, because there is a lot of bias and a lot of hard conversations around this too. But for a lot of people, you would imagine that if you have a digestive disease where you're not absorbing something, you're not really eating, and you're not absorbing food, that you must be underweight. And we both know that that's not always true. So, why is that, besides what I just said, such a poor measure for nutritional status in GI patients, like patients with gastroparesis?
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell anything medically from just looking at someone's body size,
Mhm,
right? We shouldn't be judging people and even using weight as the only monitor for
mhm,
assessment of malnutrition or any other health condition, right? You can be someone in a larger body and experience malnourishment
mhm,
or malnutrition, and you can be someone in an underweight body and also be malnourished or completely fine,
mhm.
right? And so it does take a little bit more of an assessment from a GI
Yeah,
provider, a PCP, your dietitian to really understand the whole picture of what's going on, to take into account your weight trends. I think weight in isolation is not helpful, but understanding percentage weight loss,
mhm.
percentage weight gain can tell us a picture, give us a picture of the story of what could be going on.
Yeah,
Um, I believe if you lose like I think it's 15% in like 3 to 6 months, it can put you at risk for refeeding syndrome, right?
mhm.
And so like to have that understanding of, yes, you've already gone to 20% of your weight lost in the past 3 months, then we really need to address what's going on and get to the root cause of what's going on and then look further
Yeah.
for potential nutrition deficiencies, and other things that could be happening. So I know that was a big question, but weight shouldn't be the only thing that we are looking at to
Mhm.
determine someone's health status.
Yeah, and, like, just I think for females, especially in any chronic disease or any healthcare system, that is usually something that is focused on a little bit too much, and it can change how a patient is believed based on what they look like coming in and what the perception of an undernourished patient looks like. As you so eloquently said, like, it doesn't have a look, right? And you can't make that determination just by looking at somebody or, what their size is when they walk into the clinic. Now, you had mentioned some other markers. From a dietary point of view, what are some labs or markers that you would look for that would show either maybe the beginning of like becoming undernourished, or what somebody who is malnourished could expect to see on their labs? Maybe not numbers, but the type of deficiencies that you would look for to make that determination.
Yeah, so I'll always want to know their electrolyte status. Are they abnormal? Are they normal? Where are you at dehydration wise? Iron levels, so ferritin, if your ferritin is low, B12 deficiency, whether they're plant based or just unable to consume meat due to the consistency or texture of it being difficult to digest.
Hmm.
Um, Other things, in addition to labs, as a dietitian, I want to know about like your symptoms. How
Mm,
frequently are you experiencing nausea? How many times a day are you vomiting? Bowel movements, what do they look like? Are they runny? Are you experiencing constipation? How many times a day are they happening? I also want to look at the trends of their weight, muscle mass loss, any type
mm,
of like sarcopenia, bone density loss, these types of things that can be a little bit more telling to where their nutritional status is.
mm. I wish I had you years ago.
Mm.
As you're rattling those things off, I'm like, "Where were you?" And they were like, "Oh, your labs look fine," but they only did maybe one of the labs that you mentioned. I'm like, "So how can you tell? Where's the
Yeah.
proactive medication instead of the reactive medication?" To where
Mm.
I was so sick that it got to a point where my labs lit up like a Christmas tree, and I was almost passing out every time I stood up because I was so malnourished, and
No.
it's the story that we see, and granted, our groups to us have tons and thousands of people. So, I also understand that I'm in the trenches with the patient. So to me, it's everybody, right? Like so many people are
Yes.
experiencing this. And on the large grand scheme of things, it might not be as many people as it feels to us, but looking at that, I'm like, if it's one person, it's two people. If it's two people, it's three people. And if that trend keeps happening, more people are going to be left behind, and more people are going to be in similar positions to where I was, where they skipped all the first steps and put me right on TPN because I was so sick that that's just what we had to do. And
Mhm.
it helped me, it got me healthier, it helped me put weight back on, but I think back to that as, like, why did I have to be in that position at that point? Maybe if we did some of the other things ahead of time, but, hindsight's 2020, but it's those pieces of why I will never understand why more dietitians aren't pulled in earlier instead of later, but that's a whole other conversation
I'm
for
working on it.
another
I'm
day.
working on it. I'm trying to connect with GI providers and tell them how
Mhm.
valuable, dietitians can be along the patient
Yeah.
journey, especially when people get newly diagnosed with things. Like we shouldn't let people just get yes, that all the information out there is available, but
Mhm.
it's most likely going to be beneficial done alongside someone who can guide you without you
Yes.
experiencing that level of overwhelm.
Yeah, and I know that I've overwhelmed myself when I've tried to figure something out. I'm like, and I feel like at this point in my life, I can understand and read through things pretty good, but I've gotten overwhelmed, and I am so grateful to I see 2 different dietitians, and I am so grateful to both of them because I think about where I was a couple years ago before either of them were in my life to where I am now, and just working through the emotional eating patterns, the mindset around food, my own food fears, my fear of weight loss and weight gain,
Yeah.
along with just my fear around blood sugars and eating and like what digestion looks like. I don't know where I would be without the education and expertise of those people. I would still be floundering as I was when I was like, I really can't do this anymore and I need help. And I was very, very lucky enough to find 2 people that worked for me. But I just think about all the people that don't have that, and, again, I've never understood that, and that's even more so why these conversations are important, not just for the patients, but for the clinicians as well to say, "Hey, hi, can we" like, for other people, I don't know what side you're on, I'm like, "Can we pull her in? Can we bring her into the conversation? Can I have somebody who can walk me through what you as the, provider are telling me when you leave the room?" Instead of just
Mhm.
handing me a paper on low FODMAP and sending me on my way to go cut a bunch
Yeah.
of food out of my diet, and I still have no idea what's going on, and I don't feel better.
It's so funny that you say that. I've had to advocate on my patient's behalf by contacting, and I'm happy to do this, right? Contact their
Mhm.
GI provider and say, like, hey, I know you recommended the low FODMAP diet. Based on this patient's history, this is contraindicated. I would not recommend this diet. And there are so many non diet avenues that we can approach that will help
Yeah.
them feel better, that will help them to manage the symptoms they're experiencing. We can absolutely use a more cherry picking approach to the
Mhm.
more gentle approach to the low FODMAP diet versus going full elimination and
Yep.
then never entering the reintroduction phase and being more at risk for malnutrition.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah, I get so
yeah,
heated about this.
no, I'm like, "That's good, but bad, but also good," because that passion is really I'm like, I see it now in so many more of us as more education is happening, more connections, more conversations, and even putting this information in front of patients because then they go to the physicians and say, like, "Hey, can I see a dietitian? But I would like to see a specified dietitian." Maybe they do have a passive disordered eating, so they want to see somebody like you. Maybe they don't, and they just want to see a specialized GI dietitian who just, not just, but that understands the nuances of the digestive disease. Maybe they want to see just, I'll say, an umbrella dietitian and see what they can learn from them. And maybe they get what they need depending on the severity of disease. But
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. And if you are also, maybe you're maintaining your weight. Like I've been in this position in the last few months where even though I'm hardly eating, I haven't dropped a bunch of weight. So when I go in, they're like, "Well, your weight has stayed, pretty much the same, so everything must be fine." I'm sitting here like, I've eaten maybe 600 calories in the last couple days, and, if I try to push it, I throw up or I just get so sick and I can't, like, get up off the couch because the nausea is so bad. But, yes, please tell me how the fact that my weight is stable just means it's okay. But I tell you that immediately, you're like, "No, we need to do something here." But, again, when you're only focusing on one piece of something, so many other avenues to help the patient can be overlooked and missed.
Yeah, absolutely. So weight maintenance is great. Like, right?
Mhm.
Despite you not eating possibly enough, your weight
Mhm.
is being maintained, but that doesn't necessarily tell us anything about your nutritional status,
Yep.
right? It doesn't tell us
Yep.
whether or not you've been eating enough, whether you're meeting your nutritional needs, if you're dehydrated, etc. So, yeah, that's where a dietitian would really be able to assess what's going on and provide you with some tips and tricks on how to meet your needs.
Mhm. Now, from what your education and what you've seen in practice with treating gastroparesis patients, what are some of I know we touched a little bit on the, like, deficiencies, but what are the nutrients that you most commonly see in gastroparesis patients where they're deficient? Is it some more than others, or is it any of what you had listed earlier in, like, electrolytes and things like that?
Yeah, it is. Mostly going to be like the most common ones are vitamin D, B12, iron deficiency, and electrolytes.
Mhm.
But it's going to depend on the person whether or not they are having diarrhea or constipation, vomiting, how many
Sure.
times a day, like what they're able to tolerate food wise, all that stuff. Yeah, definitely. And it takes an individualized approach. So
Mhm.
those are the most common ones.
Yeah. I know, now at this point when I get labs done, with my own education and, doing what I do here, there have been times where they'll run labs and I'm like, "I think you forgot one. Can we add this in here?" And I kinda get a look and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that would probably be good to know." And it's those small little things that I'm more comfortable saying that now because I have a little bit more of that education, but you don't know what you don't know. And imagine a nutritional marker is missed, and that could have changed the trajectory of that patient's care by just maybe supplementing the right medication or the right vitamin. It's not going to cure us, it's not going to make it all better, but it could set us up for more success. And that's where I think so much of the missing piece, and we hear this time and time again, and that's why we wanted to start this specific series around nutrition, was because this is where education is lacking the most from what we see across the board. And not knowing what nutritional deficiencies to ask for, maybe not knowing symptoms of these nutritional deficiencies to keep an eye on if you are struggling with gastroparesis, or if you're newly diagnosed, these are the things to proactively keep an eye on so you can catch it before it gets worse. Or even something as simple as chewing to a specific texture can make a really big difference in a food that might not seem gastroparesis friendly, but if you change the texture of the food, maybe you could incorporate it into your diet differently, or cook it or freeze it and then defrost it and then cook it.
Mhm.
That one for me, I was like, is that why I do better with frozen vegetables, like before, like when I cook them versus raw and then cooking them? That was a mind-blowing concept for me, and I never knew until I spoke with people who
Yeah.
knew.
Instant pots are like my favorite thing because the pressure just
Mhm.
really makes the food fork tender. Like you can literally
Yeah,
just, and you don't have to
yeah.
spend hours chewing, right?
Yeah. I didn't ever think about that before. I mean, I knew chewing was such an important thing, but I didn't really know how much that texture is important. And I'm someone who struggles with like an all liquid diet. I do
Mhm.
worse with heavy liquids than I do with solids. So trying to figure out what works there for me, but texture made a big difference. That took a lot of trial and error, but it also took a lot of direction from people that are a lot smarter than me around nutrition.
Yeah, and I think like everybody's managing their health and their unique conditions, right? Just because you
Mm,
have gastroparesis doesn't necessarily mean that's the only thing going on with your health. You may be trying
absolutely.
to manage multiple things, and it does take this like layered kind of approach.
Yeah, and I love that you said that too, because I think it's often forgotten about with nutrition alone how much, like, and I think I've talked about this in prior episodes, where the one thing that we do have control over is our diet. And it sounds kind of backwards considering what our diet might be consisting of, but
Yeah.
we control what we do. We control how much we chew. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. We we control how we cook things, what we try, how we do that. And I'm like, somebody said that to me and I was like, "Damn, you're right." Like I do have full control over this. It might not always work, but how I approach it is what I have the control over, not the outcome, but how I approach it. And that mindset really changed how I approached my own nutrition and what worked. And what I had mentioned earlier around, feeling really badly and noticing my own disordered patterns of eating when I wasn't feeling well, or things just weren't working, and like old habits started to creep in and I started to struggle. And immediately I'm like, okay, what can I do here? What's like the low-hanging fruit of something that I can go do that's not going to hopefully harm me, physically with my nausea, and that won't hurt me mentally if I go do something. So, recognizing what was happening and then finding these small little things that I could do really helped me. And I learned, again, all of that from people that are smarter than me and trial and error, but it wouldn't have
Yeah.
happened without that assistance.
Yeah. I always say to my patients, like, it's trial and trial. We're just going to keep
Mhm.
trialing.
That's really smart.
And just because there is a error doesn't mean that that error is going to stay there forever.
Yep,
Like you won't
yep.
be able to tolerate that food forever. Maybe in the current state, things are just
Mhm.
like not feeling good and very volatile. Maybe when we get to
Yeah.
a more calm place with your digestive system, if you feel comfortable, we can reintroduce
Mhm.
that previously failed food and see how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah. Just find ways that didn't work in that moment, and it's a helpful reframe instead of looking at it as I failed, and that was the biggest thing for me going forward was trying to get out of that mindset because then going into the next thing or next trial or the next food or even just the next day, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth of going into that, and that just I felt like that continuously set me up to fail every single day, and when you struggle with nutrition enough as it is, you don't wanna feel set up to fail because we already know how difficult it can be. But I know, one of the other things on this topic I did wanna ask, is when you're prioritizing, nutrition or how to prioritize nutrition when you're struggling to get in just enough calories. So, I'll say using me as an example of a person who is really struggling to get in the calories, like what would without personalizing it too much, but what would be a generalized step to prioritize the nutrition when you're in a spot where you can't just make any choice and you're really struggling to get food and nutrition in?
Yes. So at baseline, if you're not meeting your nutritional needs energy wise, calorically, that is always going to be my first priority.
Mhm,
We know that, yes, expanding your diet, getting a different variety of nutrition is great for providing your body with different macro and micronutrients like vitamins and minerals.
mhm.
But I also want your brain to function optimally. I want you to
Yeah.
feel energized throughout the day. And if there is a deficit in calories or energy there, it can be then hard to focus on meeting these micronutrients.
Mhm,
Right. So we could rely on a combination of things, right? Whether it's like a fourth of a liquid nutrition beverage that has certain nutrients in it that you aren't getting with the foods you're currently tolerating, right?
mhm,
So just slowly adding in little bits of, and when I mean little bits, I mean small eating occasions,
mhm,
gap paced throughout the day to where you feel it's tolerable, that offer a variety of different nutrients, while also meeting your energy needs. I know that sounded very clinical, but
it made
baby
sense.
steps.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's difficult, I try to think about all the things that I've learned or, how do you apply this to your real life, and that's difficult. You don't really know what's gonna work, and it worked on Monday, and you tried on Tuesday, and it didn't work, so you try something else on Wednesday, and then you just sit back on Thursday, and you're like, "I don't wanna try anymore," and you just don't. And
Mhm.
I've had so many days like that where my husband will say like, "Aren't you hungry?" And I'm like, "No, I'm
You're
really not.
exhausted.
I'm
Yeah.
just tired." And the thought of chewing, the thought of thinking of something, the thought of actually getting up and even making something as simple as toast, which is usually what my choice is to pick some toast because it's easy for me, or depending on the bread, I don't always have to toast it, but that's usually where my go-to is a carb, and 'cause that's the easiest thing for me to digest, and it gets to a point where I'm like, I'm just so tired because A, to your point, I've had hardly any calories, and maybe the calories I did eat, maybe they didn't stay down or they're just sitting in my stomach and not going anywhere, so making choices by that 4th day has gotten that much harder because I'm not functioning mentally the way
Hmm.
that I need to because I'm not getting in that nutrition, and I feel like that's something almost every gastroparesis patient can relate to because we've either been in that position at one point or another, or we're currently living in that position, right? Of how do I make this better decision? How do I make a decision for myself? How do I take this next step for myself? How do I advocate for myself when I can't even get off the couch because the nausea is so bad or I'm so tired and depleted? What do I do? And without proper supportive measures in place, there really isn't an answer that anybody can give you to what can I do in that
Yeah.
situation.
In these situations with my clients, I like to help them prep for flare days, is what I call them, just when like
Mhm.
things are bad. you have
Yeah.
zero energy, you need help and support, I like making lists and
Mm,
having them accessible to people that you live with, to family members, to anyone who can possibly help care for you on these really bad flare
mm,
days. It could include foods that you know you tolerate. It could be cream of rice or Chex cereal, whatever the situation is, for at least something for someone to put in front of you.
yeah. Yeah. I really
Because
like that concept.
that level of decision fatigue that you're
Mm.
experiencing, it's it's really hard,
Mhm.
right? And if you can have this sheet of, okay, I will probably tolerate, right? Every day is different, like you said,
Mhm.
but if I don't have to think and someone in my home or friend or a roommate can say, like, well, do you want me to make you rice? Or do you want me to heat up bone broth or whatever the situation
Yeah.
is and put it in a mug? And when you feel like the nausea is a little less, or you've eaten a ginger chew and you're like, okay, I feel a little okay, I'm going to take a sip and see how this goes.
Mhm.
It's just the next step to getting something in your body, which will help you then take the next step in caring for yourself.
Yeah, I really like that concept of like lists are I'm like, you're a girl after my own heart when you mention lists. I'm like, that is right up my alley. And I think that's really smart to do of things that, have been tried and true for you in the past. So you can have that accessible to have somebody, like you said, just put it in your hand to really help you
Mhm.
when you can't do that for yourself. And I think as much as it sounds like you might be relinquishing some control there, right? I almost feel like that's really helping you keep some control because you're staying within like a predetermined list of
Yes.
foods. So someone's not like doing their best and trying to be super helpful and they come in, they're like, "Here, try this," and not realizing that that's the absolute last food you can and should be eating.
Yeah.
And it gives you and anybody around you the help, and I really like that. So hopefully anybody
Mhm.
listening will like that too, because I'm definitely going to be making a list and sharing with my husband to say these are
Yeah,
the foods
and
and
even,
things that'll
like,
help me.
keeping a list of accommodations that you may need. Like, let's say there's someone
Hmm.
with on the, like, neurodivergent spectrum. If
Hmm.
you need complete silence, if you need a comforting TV show, if you need your eating environment to be a certain way, like, what are those
Yeah.
accommodations so that that person bringing you the food isn't like, "Oh, I've come with my 3 toddlers to feed you," and you're,
Yeah.
like, overstimulated and my house is a toddler home, so I can say that. Um just like it takes some effort and energy to think about, but maybe putting this
Hmm.
down on paper will help the decision fatigue and the annoyance and just the heightened
Difficulty.
level of difficulty, yeah, be reduced in that moment.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm definitely going to take that advice, and I would recommend to everybody else listening to give it a try because again, it's not something that is super difficult to do on a day that you have, a little bit more brain power, that you have a little bit more. It's like, what might I need if tomorrow I'm flaring? What can I set myself up for success, today for tomorrow? And
Mhm.
when we have that energy, sometimes like, I don't want to do one more thing, but your future self will thank you for that dang list. Your future self will absolutely thank you for that list. So I think that's, really beneficial and really, really helpful. So I appreciate that piece of
Yeah,
advice.
and, like, I love my phone. I use the
Hmm.
Notes app all the time, and they are
Yep.
shareable. So if you're like, "I'm just gonna
Yes.
do this and save it for future," and then you're texting your roommate, like, "Here's my accommodation list. Here are the foods that I tolerate.
Yeah.
Can you bring me one thing from it? Or can you order the groceries? I'll Venmo you." Like,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
situation, would it be helpful?
Yeah, I really, really like that because it feels so simplistic in the best way. And it's something that I think probably a lot of us have overlooked because it's so simple. You're like, that like I don't need to do that. I'm looking for the big thing. I'm looking for the answer,
Yeah.
right? But sometimes there isn't the answer that we're searching for, but there is something that can make the following day maybe help you breathe a little bit easier or just give you a little bit more time to heal. And if you don't have to expel that extra energy that you really don't have, you can keep that for yourself and healing and going forward and help you through however long that flare could be. Because it could be a few days, it could be a few
Yeah.
weeks. We've all been through the variations of what that looks like, and it can be really difficult. But I really do like that. Definitely, my husband's son would be like, "What is this?" I'm like, "It's my accommodation list."
Here are all my needs.
Yes,
It
please make sure
includes
they're
a
met.
massage. No.
Um, one thing I keep saying one thing, I'm like, another thing that I wanted to touch on, before we run out of too much time, because this has been such a great conversation. When people are in a space of maybe enjoying food again after years of, feeling afraid of it hurting them, a combination of the two, what's something that you in a small step forward that would help patients, start to feel better and start to feel the joy around eating something that maybe they missed or they haven't had in a really long time, or frankly, just any food that doesn't hurt their insides.
What would help them feel more joy with food?
Yeah, like when you like to really I think back to myself of what would it feel like or how did I get to a place of enjoying food again? Whether that's just applesauce, but it's something, where you're not afraid of it or maybe you feel a little bit more food freedom to make those choices to say, I know the tools, I have the tips and the tricks, but I want to give this a try and to really start to feel food again,
Yeah.
feel enjoyment from food again.
Yeah, yeah. Fear can really take that joy away. And so kudos to you if you're at a place where you're ready to like expand your diet and overcome food fears. I think what is really great about enjoying food is that there's so many like senses that we can explore that add to the
Mhm.
experience. So if we can come from a place of, yes, I know this is only applesauce, but it's new to me today and I want to enjoy it in the most that I can.
Mhm.
Maybe starting out with some grounding practices. First, let's take a diaphragmatic breath to really, or a couple, to really calm the nervous system.
Mhm.
Enter the meal or the dining experience with a calm state of mind and
Mhm.
smell it. Right?
Yeah.
Ask yourself, like, when was the last time I had this scent? Like, what memories is it bringing up? Is it bringing up grandma's
Hmm.
apple pie at, whatever holiday? And oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
really used to miss that crispy crust, but, I'm not just not there yet. And it may not be doable for me, but maybe down the line or maybe in a different version.
Yeah.
It's tasting it, like really allowing the food to touch all surface areas of your tongue. We have different taste buds that do different
Mhm.
things for us. I think it's like sour, sweet, bitter, umami. Um, Depending on where the food hits our tongue. So that could be a fun experiment for you to see
Hmm.
like, does the applesauce taste sweet or sour on the tip of my tongue versus the back of my tongue versus the side of my tongue?
Interesting.
These types of things, just to bring a little bit more
Mhm.
awareness and fun. Um, yeah, there's so many different things that we can do to add joy. It could be unfood related. It could be setting up the
Mhm.
environment with like your favorite candle and your music or your TV show that you cannot wait to binge watch because we all have those like fun little
Oh, yeah.
pleasures. And I do find that while I am talking about being more mindful with food, oftentimes accommodations like mindless eating while watching a TV show is seen as a bad thing,
Mhm.
but it can absolutely play a role in helping us feel joy with food because
Hmm.
we're watching something that is distracting us. We're watching something
Yeah.
that is taking us away from possibly the flare we had a couple weeks ago, and you don't want to think about
Mhm.
that while you're enjoying this
Yeah.
food.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. So now when I'm mindless eating, I'm like, I'm doing healthy dietary practices while mindlessly eating, like, no judgment. She
No,
told me
there is
to.
no judgment. There's absolutely no judgment. Do what you can with what you have access to. And if it feels
Mhm.
good and it's supporting you on your journey, like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great message too, because we're all so different and we've all experienced like we gastroparesis is different for everybody. GI diseases and digestive health is different for everybody. Like, no two stories are the same, no two systems are the same, and we can't all be treated exactly the same. There are some things that might be really helpful for a majority of us, but I think especially when it comes to the nutrition and our past, our future, what we're currently going through, any other comorbidities, you can't just be handed one sheet of paper and sent on your way because that just sets us up to fail before we've even started. And that makes me so sad. And I'm hopeful because more conversations with people like yourself, I do see other physicians starting to integrate dietitians into their practices where it's like you see me, then you see the dietitian. Even some places also are bringing GI psychology in for a very holistic point of view. And when you guys are all in the same room and everybody's in agreement and everybody is working on the same goals together, that is going to help the patients do their best, feel their best, and have the best chance of living a better life. And, once we all get out of our silos and come together at the table, I think we'll be doing a whole
Yeah.
lot better.
Absolutely couldn't agree. Integrative care with the dream team, GI psych,
Mhm.
GI doctor, GI dietitian is the sweet spot.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been such a great conversation. I'm like, I can't wait to rewatch this because I'm going to take notes while I'm editing to be like, okay, this is what I need. This is my accommodation. This is what we need to do because even as someone who's been through a lot of dietitians, a lot of different care, I still have a whole lot to learn. So I'm hopeful that even just making changes from the new learnings from people, new education, new information coming out, and reintegrating some old, healthy patterns will be helpful for me and for anybody else that wants to do the same. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.